And as he began to have these contacts with beings, he began to detail them to me.
She says it has taken her decades to come up with the courage to tell her story. And it's all documented right here in this book, and it's a story she will share with us today. I had to ask her, it's a true story, right? It's not fiction. And she says, yes, it's a true story. Now, you may think once we get into this that it's science fiction romance. True story of her journeys. Talking about Lisa Nelson. Lisa is an experiencer and an author whose life was changed from her experiences meeting an extraordinary young man that she fell in love with, started as a teenage crush, found out eventually he wasn't of this earth. And Lisa, you married him. We're going to bring in Lisa Nelson now. Lisa, you're a gifted author. The book is amazing. We can't wait to hear about your experiences. Lisa, you married the guy?
I married the guy. Let me thank Hollywood Disclosure Alliance for bringing us together.
Yes.
It's
Thank
been
you.
a pleasure to be introduced to you by Dan Harari. And I'm so encouraged by being able to talk with you today. Yes, this did involve a marriage and 9 years of dating, getting through high school and 5 years of college before we did marry. And I started life in the Chicago area, about 25 miles west in a suburb that was developing at the time. I grew up in lots of fields and play space and had a very close-knit neighborhood of which many of the girls from our neighborhood are close friends to this day and are part of my coming out and things that were witnessed. So they also gave their permission to be mentioned in this. So in high school, I began to date Rob. I had had a crush on him since he moved into our area, and his family moved into a home that was directly adjacent to the neighborhood I grew up in. And as soon as we started dating, which was 40 years ago, he began to tell me that he was not like the rest of his family. There was a point where he took me for a walk and was coming clean to me and saying that when he was young, his parents were taken by a UFO that stopped them on a highway in Michigan, and that he was taken in by the Barclays, and he had recently, at that point in time, been contacted by beings who wanted to talk to him about that, and he seemed very upset and distraught, and I felt for him, but I was also very concerned about his state of mind and the sorrow in him. And as he began to have these contacts with beings, he began to detail them to me, and the story began to develop as a young man who was also a very ancient being and had been a warrior and collaborated with a group called the Guardians. And the Guardians are a protective entity that shields undeveloped planets from piracy, meaning being taken over by beings that would plunder the natural resources of a planet or put all its beings into slavery. They were expressing concern about the nuclear arms race at the time. If you were a child in school in the 60s and 70s, you were being taught how to be ready for the nuclear bomb to drop. Nuclear war was that imminent. My high school had a bomb shelter in it, which shelter over thousands of people with cans of biscuits and water to sustain them for a length of time. That's how imminent nuclear war was at the time. The Guardians began to talk about intervening in the Cold War, and they were going to do it by developing technology and downloading it to aeronautics engineers in the U.S. military so that our country would get ahead.
Lisa, this is really detailed and in depth. You were worried about his mental stability? Did you ever think he's making this stuff up to impress me?
I often wondered if he was mentally ill, and I also wondered if he was playing a terrible joke on me. For a long time, I kept waiting for him to laugh and go, ha ha ha, that joke's on you. And that never happened. And in fact, he began to talk about the idea that I would be interacting with his so-called replacements when he was going to be taken aboard craft. And this process was that he was going to be instantaneously lifted, which is one of the technologies I witnessed thousands of times, as did his brother, who I quote in the book. So there was a witness to this, a member of his household. The process was he would be instantaneously lifted and simultaneously replaced by a holographic computer-generated replacement that bore his exact likeness and some of his ways, although the first iteration, which was called number 2, was very stiff. And this...
Where was he being lifted to, Lisa? I'm sorry to interrupt.
He was
being lifted.
Being lifted to a guardian craft.
To a spaceship.
A spaceship.
And replaced with an image of himself, a holograph.
It was referred to as a computer-generated, program constructed replacement, because they said the rules were you can't just take a human being off the planet. And he had to have someone in his place when he was gone because it would raise a lot of questions. And this was done so instantaneously that I was unable to see it, and the only indication that I had that the change was happening was a standard snap of a finger. And sometimes that was the only indication that I had. But the rule was that it had to tell me who was there at the time. So it might be finger snap, this is 2. And it would often be very terse sounding. Or if he came back, Rob came back, he'd snap his finger and say, hey, I'm back, so that I could keep up with the changes. Now, the fact that I wasn't able to see these changes very much bothered me because I wondered if he was a fantastic actor. And so I began to demand that they slow it down for me, or that they let me go on a ship, take me up so I could see. And he began to detail his life of interacting with the Guardians, meaning working on calculations, and began to detail a life of doing missions. But there was one night something very, very striking happened with me, which was that I was asleep one night and became aware. I was awakened by a formation of helicopters which came over my home. And it was the dead of night. That's my home, my beloved former home. I heard this formation of helicopters coming. It seemed very odd because there were so many of them, and they stopped over the yard. That's the backyard, a lovely place to grow up. And when they stopped, it was roaring so loudly and I was very shocked that no lights went on in the neighborhood, or that my parents nor my family woke up. But I was in a serene state, and I walked out to the front yard, and I was looking straight above me, and very low over me was a craft that was so behemoth that it covered the sky. It literally was beyond the length of the property of the home across the street from us, and that was a deep backyard, so it had to be larger than a football field. And as soon as I came out the front door, the formation of helicopters had left. I was left looking at the craft. The trees were not nearly as high at that point in time. This was a more recent photo. But as I was looking at the bottom of the craft, I heard a very soft hum, and then suddenly I was inside the craft, kneeling on my hands and knees on a curved surface, more kind of like being inside a very large bowl, and looking at the top of the house and the tall tree in the front yard. So I was taking this in, and then I heard a voice speak to me saying, "Stand up." And as I turned around, I saw a very tall being that looked a bit odd. It looked like it was dressed up to look friendly and almost like a children's dentist, but it seemed to have a strange wig on. It was very loopy, and if it wasn't a brown wig, I would have thought it was a clown wig. And it was smiling, and when it spoke to me, its mouth did not move, and that's when I noticed that it was speaking to me telepathically.
Mm.
It had me stand up and then said, "We want to ask you a question." And the question came not in the form of English, but a rifling through my mind. And I could tell that they were going through all the memories of the contents of my mind.
Mm.
And I struggled mentally a little bit, like, hey, let me give the answer to this question. And the reply was that they were going to get it themselves because I would convolute the answer.
Oh, my goodness. We're going to take a break. This is really involved. So you're on the ship now. You're talking to an alien, interdimensional, whatever, who looks like he's dressed up maybe to look friendly with a fake smile, but telepathically communicating with you. So I want to know, what did he want from you? But we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back right after this when Lisa Nelson joins us. Stay with us. Welcome back, everyone, to We Are Not Alone. May K. Beeler here, joined with Lisa Nelson, talking about an encounter she had on a spacecraft of sorts, interacting with an alien or an interdimensional. Lisa, what did this being want from you?
It It put me through an exercise of examining some glyphs of which I could read them strangely, and then they lasered some blue light into my eye, which was transmitting a myriad of images into my mind. I don't know exactly what they wanted from me, but they definitely were interested in the contents of my mind. Um, I did find myself suddenly back in my bed, and life carried on pretty much as it had been before that happened. But I knew that I had to understand that what I was dealing with was beyond anything that was easily comprehensible. And it gave me a lot to think about. They began to show me their technology and things that they could do on the ground. Not only could they lift Rob up and replace him, but they could also use illusion to make things look like things that they are not. They could send visitors to me and have them look exactly right like Rob. They would call that using Rob's form, which was one way of having visitors come. They also, besides the holograms, had androids, which were things that could monitor, or things that appeared to be like over overfed crows that were more the size of chickens and waddled more like chickens.
Oh, my God, that's weird.
But it was weird. There was a lot of weirdness going on in my life at that time, but they said that they were monitors, that they were used to help protect him while he was on Earth, because he was, in fact, said to be a displaced being from another planet who had lost the society to disease. So
let me ask you, when Rob came back, no longer a hologram, after being lifted into the ship, did you say, "Rob, you won't believe what happened to me. You became a hologram, and then I was on the ship, and there was a clown person, and I was scared"? Did you ever have conversations like that with him?
we did have discussions about the quality of the holograms. They began coming and going so much that it wasn't a one-time thing. It was more like something that happened thousands of times. He would go up and come down very frequently, and there were very few periods of time where he wasn't continuously coming and going. The iterations changed over time because the first one was fairly crude, and they got better and more specific and more believable as time went on, until we had gone through enough iterations that we eventually called them number 10 instead of a numbered replacement, because we had gone through number 2, 3, 4, all the way through 10, and then we stopped at 10 because there had been so many. As far as the onboard craft experience, I didn't talk about it. I had a severe fever right after that, and I ended up being hospitalized, and it distracted us for a while with that. But there was another situation where
Let me ask you, was the fever associated with the experience? You know how people allegedly get radiation sickness?
I have,
Do you think the fever was associated with being up on the craft?
in hindsight, I have wondered that because of the timing of it, but there's no way to know. And I didn't have any skin burns. It was just the fever. It was very high. It was about 105 and a half. Um, but I started being tutored by the holograms and sometimes Rob, but even the guardians visited me at points and times when they felt that I had to know things. They said that they were visiting nuclear facilities and intentionally causing national security emergencies because they were monitoring and they wanted it known that they were monitoring. They were being very blatant about it.
Lisa, because I don't want to run out of time, I want to get back to the book. Or do we need to take a break, Austin, or we're okay now? Okay. So folks want to know, and I want to know, why you married this interdimensional. And from the book, I know you mentioned that you didn't want him to be in touch with the UFO folks anymore, and this put his life in danger. Tell us about that and how he was regenerated.
After we were married, I'll say quickly, there was one other UFO experience where I was told that there would be a UFO sitting at his house in the neighborhood because he was angry about an interaction that happened with a being who came down in his form and interacted with me in an inappropriate way. So that is the picture on the cover of the book. It was something that was about the size of the World Trade Center with no openings. It was a rectangle on its end, and it sat in the sky for hours while quite a few people in the neighborhood saw it. This is when I felt that we needed to have a normal life, and we had always been talking about marrying. From very early, we talked about marrying, and it was a real love story in a sense, but it was also filled with stress because of interference with the guardians and always the switching with the holograms, who could tell me when UFOs were sitting docked in the skies, and they could tell me exactly when they were going to move again, which was fascinating, but it was also very exhausting to take all this in, especially with the weight of the nuclear situation going on. So after marrying Rob, he separated from the Guardians, and it wasn't long after we got to New York City, where I wanted to pursue music, I had a degree in music, that he began to get ill. And there were times when his moods would be hostile, and that I didn't understand that. He wasn't working or didn't hold a job very long, and he wasn't looking good. And eventually, after a lot of stress around that, he revealed to me that he was sick and that he had a neurological disorder. He was calling it myasthenia gravis, but he's saying that it was very severe. I have wondered if that might have been effects of radiation, because the Guardians spoke of radiation effects with him quite a few times and sometimes did treat him for it. But by the time we were married, we were having as little to do with the Guardians as possible. But as it turned out, Rob felt that his death was the only future for him, and he began to consort with a group of vigilantes that he called Democracy. And at the time in New York City in the early 80s, vigilantism was rampant from different kinds of factions, even in law enforcement. And he was involved in something that was very dangerous. And I was upset about it because I didn't want him getting hurt, but I also didn't want me getting hurt because his cohorts were intimidating me on the street. and other places letting.
Lisa, we need to take a break. So, in other words, he got in with the wrong crowd,
He got
and these bad boys, whatever, they didn't know he was an interdimensional.
nothing about that.
Nothing about that. He just was sick. He got in with the wrong crowd. And I know something heartbreaking happens. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back right after this. Welcome back, everyone, to this edition of We're Not Alone. Lisa Nelson joins us, telling us about her incredible and remarkable life story. Lisa, you were telling us about your boyfriend who became your husband, who was an interdimensional, but kind of gave all that up to be married to you. And unfortunately, he got sick, perhaps from radiation sickness from the spacecraft he'd been on, but got with the wrong crowd. Then what happened?
There was an effort that this group made, and it went wrong, and they ended up attacking Rob. I had left him the night before because, due to his illness, he had been having seizures, nearly killed me with a hunting knife. So I ran away, and he went on and did a sort of a effort with these group who were supposedly fighting crack, but they were involved in drugs in some way. And when things went wrong, they shot him in the head. And what happened was the Guardians called me at my office. I was unaware of that event, but the Guardians told me that Rob was dead, that they had fished his body out of the East River and repaired his body, and that they were going to regenerate him. And they wanted me to raise him until he became a full adult again, because initially he was going to be an infant in a man's body. And after that event, which was very startling, the energy involved in that event was so powerful that it nearly made me pass out. All the details are in the book because we're saying this all very quickly. But in the next moment, I was dealing with a man who didn't know anything about anything, was afraid of the telephone, wanted to carry a Smurf's lunchbox everywhere, was very naive about everything, including advertising on television, didn't know how to make change for a purchase, like buy a candy bar and get change back from your $20 bill. And I spent 20 months with him, helping him develop. And in the end, he did a mission of his own. And that's when I decided that I couldn't go more in the direction of being with someone who was doing missions. And
You mean going back into to a spaceship?
Going back to the spaceship and doing the mission work, which was warrior type work, fighting the piracy and fighting things that would encroach on other planets, that the Guardians would maintain technological sophistication to be able to protect planets.
What did your love remain intact? He was regenerated. I guess he was still in a grown-up adult body, right? But he had to go through development again. Did he still love you?
He would talk about love, and I was very shell-shocked and saw him as being so different from Rob that it was like a different being. Problems that Rob had, which was the seizures, the neurological disorders, the violence that came out of his moods, the aggression, sort of like what happens with dementia and Alzheimer's, that was gone. I had, in a instance of protecting myself from him, I hit him on the side of his head and broke his eardrum. Tomar did not have a broken eardrum. So everything that was wrong with him, with Rob, was not present with little Tomar. And he eventually grew up and started making plans on something that they were calling a time travel mission, where they were concerned about something that would happen in about 1,000 years' time if it wasn't corrected in the now. And
Lisa, I'm going to hate to stop you. We're almost out of time. This is such a complicated, heavy, out there story. And, we got to have people read the book. So where can they get the book? And then before we say goodbye, what message do the Guardians or these interdimensionals have for us? And what did you learn from this? But quickly, how can we get in touch with you? Where can we get the book?
The book is on Amazon, so it's Earth's Secret Visitors. Are They Here to Help Us? By Lisa M. Nelson, HTCP. And the overarching message from the Guardians is that nuclear weapons are a problem. They endanger not only our existence, but other beings of other dimensions in our terrestrial realm, as well as other planets. And they have said that we will not be able to engage in contact with other planetary systems until we evolve. And considering I saw so many types of technology that were invisible to the naked eye, but very profoundly, almost magical seeming, we have a very limited consciousness and very limited sensory. And if we were to develop our intuition and work from the standpoint of heart-centeredness, we would be able to see much more and understand much more, and we would be able to stop being a gain-oriented, money-oriented, control-oriented society. We could solve all the problems if we weren't so militaristic. Say that in a simple sense.
So, Lisa, let's just hope we evolve. That's the only answer, right? Evolution. And of course, love. I did fail to mention that you are a certified practitioner of energy medicine. You are a healer. And you do help people who have had experiences. May they reach out to you?
Yes, my website is lisanelsonhealingtouch.com, and my email is consciousnesswriter@gmail.com.
Well, Lisa Nelson, you deserve your own movie. It is a remarkable, extraordinary story. And I know it takes courage to talk about it, and tore at the heartstrings a little bit when it came to the love part with your soulmate from another dimension. So we're going to leave everyone with that. Lisa, thank you for joining us. So much to ask you if you're going to be back in touch with the Guardians or with Rob, but we'll leave that for another conversation. We're going to read the book. And we thank all of you out there for joining us for this edition of We Are Not Alone, streaming on Queen City News Plus. I'm your host, May K. Beeler. We'll see you next time.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.